Let's put it this way.
Item H. And so
Play her, work her.
I think we'll just start. Good morning and welcome to this first meeting of 2018 of SBCAG here in our Santa Maria hearing room, and we've got people participating both in Santa Barbara and here in Santa Maria. Ms. Contreras, would you call the roll?
Directors Williams?
Here.
Here. Wolf? Here. Adam? Lavanino? Richardson?
Here.
Lizaldi?
Here.
Mosby?
Here.
Aceves?
Here.
Clark? Dominguez?
Here.
Patino? Here. Andrezek?
Here.
And Chair Hartman.
Here. Please stand for the pledge. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now is the time for public comment on matters not on today's agenda and within SBCAG's jurisdiction. Ms. Contreras, do we have any speaker slips from the public?
We have no public comment speaker slips.
Thank you. Then turning to our consent calendar, are there any items that anyone would like to pull A through K? Director Kern.
Madam Chairperson, members of the board, item AD has a revision in the data that was included in the staff report. The revision was submitted by the City of Goleta, clarifying the acreage that is being impacted by this amendment. It does not, however, change the staff's recommendation that it is still consistent with the airport land use plan. So the action can move forward as presented, but I just wanted to clarify that they did provide additional data, and it does change some of the numbers that are included in the staff report, but it does not change our recommendation.
So do we need to vote on that separately, or do we just take that with the whole consent calendar vote?
Madam Chair, you can take it with the whole consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items in addition to item D that anyone would like to pull? And I believe Director Williams has to recuse himself from C, is that correct? So we'll vote separately on that. I guess I see he's leaving.
Actually, 4H.
Oh, 4H, okay. Yes. So he's leaving, so would you read that into the record, Ms. Contreras?
Certainly. 4H, Carpinteria Creek Shuttle Easy Lift Contract Amendment. Approve, ratify, and authorize the chair to sign a contract amendment with Easy Lift Transportation to increase the not-to-exceed contract amount from $150,000 to $200,000 to cover an additional month of Carpinteria Creek shuttle service until the temporary bike path connection is open for use in January 2018.
And may I have a motion to approve that, please? Second? And we need to call a roll vote because we're in two different places.
Directors Wolf?
Aye.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Is this even possible to do at this point?
Director Kern.
Excuse me. The amendment is to continue with the contract. We're continuing with the service that Easy Lift is providing in the area. And so the service is going to be extended beyond what we originally anticipated because we thought the bike path would be back in operation at this time. So I'm not sure exactly what your question is. Yes, we can amend the contract to add additional funds.
No, I know, but is the bike path? I mean, I'm not sure exactly where the bike path is, and
Yeah.
I just went on a tour on Tuesday of Montecito. And
Yeah, this
that-
is in Carpinteria, so this is down.
not
this-
affected.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a-
And just for the record, do we have any public comment on this matter?
We have no public comment.
Okay. So we did have a motion, a second, a question, and we're ready now to take the vote.
Directors Wolf?
Aye.
Adam? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Aceves?
Aye.
Dominguez? Patino? Andrezek? And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 10-0.
So I think that takes us then for a motion for the balance, or Supervisor Wolf, did you have something? No. Oh. All right.
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So we want a motion to approve the balance of the administrative agenda. May I have that motion? So moved. Second? Any further discussion? Would you call the vote? Thank you, Ms. Contreras.
Certainly. Director Williams?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Adam? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Aceves?
Aye.
Dominguez? Patino? Andrezek? And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
So that completes the administrative part of our agenda. Turning to our action items, would you read item 5 into the record, Ms. Contreras?
Item 5, SBCAG Vice Chair for 2018. Elect SBCAG Vice Chair for 2018.
Thank you. And do we have a nomination for vice chair? As I understand it, Ms. Kern, would you give a little background? We tend to go from city and county and north and south. So would you just explain where we are?
Sure. According to our bylaws, that whoever is the chair, if they represent the county, then in our bylaws, the vice chair must be a representative of the city and vice versa. So if the chair was a city rep, then a county rep would need to be the vice chair. At your last meeting, we had on the agenda to elect the vice chair at that meeting, but it was suggested that we wait until this meeting to allow the city reps to determine who they would like to represent them. So at this time, I'll bring it back to the chair.
Okay, thank you. And Director Richardson.
Since Ms. Patino attended Washington last year, I believe, on the trip, and that since she's from a northern city, I believe that we should recommend that she would be the vice chair.
Okay, so you move
I move
Director
that.
Patino, and may I have a second?
I'll second that.
We got
All
2
right.
seconds.
And technically, let me just ask, do we have any public comment slips on this?
No public comment.
Any further discussion? Would you once again call the roll?
Directors Williams,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Adam, Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby, Aceves,
Aye.
Dominguez, Patino, Andrusik, and Chair Hartman.
An enthusiastic aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, and then turning to item number 6. Would you read that into the record, please?
Do you want me to read them separately and then we do the votes?
Director Kern, what's your preference?
Yes, this is probably the most confusing and convoluted item of your entire year. It requires, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 actions in one agenda item. So I would recommend you take them
separately.
each one at a time, make your nominations and appoint them, and then move on to the next.
Do you do one roll call for all of them or just?
I would defer to legal counsel if we can do roll call at the end for each nomination,
Or do we do it?
or do we have to vote on each one?
Mr. Chair, can I recommend that those that have served or are presently serving on those particular appointments
Be asked if they would like to continue.
See if they would like to stay on the seat, and then we can eliminate those portions of the
Nomination process.
Madam Chair, what I'd recommend, it depends on how you do your motions. So if you wanted to do multiple nominations within a motion, which I think is what Director Richardson's getting at, then you could do one vote for all of those items.
Sure. So why don't we just walk through each of these and see who is eager and willing to serve, who is currently serving, whether they're willing to continue.
Okay.
So for A,
Yes, I will walk through this. This is the CalCog. This is the California Association of Councils of Governments. They meet twice a year, and there's a conference once a year. It's a regional organization of council of governments. It's a great way to get information about what's going on at the state level and to organize ourselves at the state level. Currently, Director Sierra is appointed as the CalCog rep, and she's done a great job in representing the agency. I have not heard from her if she's still interested in doing this. I would hope she is. I don't know if. Okay. So I would suggest we just, if there's no other interest in serving on this committee, that we appoint Holly or Director Sierra to this committee.
and who has served as the alternate?
We do not have an alternate.
Alice Patino was alternate.
Oh, was that Alice? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I missed that.
And are you willing to continue? I would just assume not. Okay, so then we need another alternate. Who else would be willing to step up as an alternate on this committee? Director Mosby? That's a smile. That's a yes, right?
I did a stint one
And
time
then?
as the rep on it. I think, somebody else would want to get involved. I think it'd be a good one. Can alternate serve as an alternate?
Well, I think we're going to have, we're making an assumption that Director Sierra would continue in the major seat. So we just need an alternate. And can an alternate, I think maybe, I don't know. That's a legal question.
I would do the alternate.
Okay. Director Mosby's willing.
Twisted my arm enough.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we have those two. The Low Sand Board, they meet on a more regular basis to discuss the Amtrak service that we have on the Surfliner. And currently, Helene was our rep, so she can no longer serve as that rep. And Michael Bennett was the alternate. And I understand that Michael would like to be the primary representative on the Low Sand Board. And so he's made that clear to me. I don't know if the board would concur with that. So we would need if they
Madam
concur
Chair?
with that.
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Director Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had an opportunity to speak with Director Bennett, and he is interested, just as Ms. Kern stated. So I would like to nominate him.
All right.
As the delegate.
All right. And I think we're going through this in a somewhat less formal process, but Director Bennett, and then an alternate on this committee.
Chair Bennett. Chair Hart.
Director Dominguez.
I'd be happy to take the alternate position, and I'm happy to support Michael Bennett because they have a train station there in Goleta that's undergoing a lot of work. So I think would be great to see him serve in that role, and I'd be happy to serve in the alternate position.
All right. Moving to C then, appoint one delegate and one alternate to the Coast Rail Coordinating Council. And I'd be interested in serving on this one. But I don't want to displace someone else who's already serving.
Helene was our rep on this as well, so
right.
if you could volunteer, that'd be great.
All right, and we need an alternate as well?
Yes.
I would be happy to serve as alternate.
Wonderful.
To continue the city's interest.
And 3 members and 1 alternate on the Coastal Express Policy Committee. Who has served to date? Supervisor Wolf?
I have served.
Are you
Yeah,
willing to?
both Supervisor Wolf and I serve. I would be happy to continue to serve on that committee.
Wonderful. Supervisor
As would
Wolf?
I. Yes, I would too.
The city
And,
of Santa Barbara was on that committee, and I'd be happy to continue.
okay. And then we simply need an alternate there.
Director Clark was the last alternate. He's not here, but.
We'll plug him in.
Yeah, we'll plug
All
him
right. And then E, Director Richardson, you've served on that for many years now, right? Wonderful. And who has been the alternate? Oh, I am. All right. Well, I'll continue. All right, that brings us to the final, and that is to the Executive Committee. And Director Kern, would you describe who is on the Executive Committee and where we find ourselves on that today?
Sure. On the executive committee, per your bylaws, is the chair, vice chair, and the former past chair. It is up to the current chair to determine if she would like to appoint other members of the board to the executive committee. Historically, it has been the chairs of the sub-regional committees, and currently Alice has the pleasure of being also the chair of the North County sub-regional as well as vice chair of this board. So she is fulfilling dual roles. So maybe up to the chair if she wants to appoint someone other than Alice to this, because Alice is already a member per the bylaws, other than Alice to represent North County on the executive committee.
Right.
Janet is the chair of the South Coast Subregional, so if you wanted to appoint her to the executive committee, that's who it would be.
Absolutely, but that gets us only 4 then, right?
Yeah,
so I would like an additional member just to have an odd number on the executive committee, and I wonder who else would like to serve.
Madam Chair, I'd be willing to serve in that position.
All right. So now, if we could have, if somebody's taken good notes, and we could repeat this as part of a proposed motion that we could then go forward. Director Kern, do you have it, or our clerk?
I have it.
Thank you, Ms.
So,
Contreras.
do you want me to say who's been nominated?
Yes,
Okay.
on each, and then we'll just have a motion.
For item A, CalCog, they've been nominated Director Sierra and Director Mosby. For the Lausanne positions, it'll be Director Bennett and Director Dominguez. For the Coast Rail Coordinating Council, Director Hartman was the primary and Dominguez is the alternate. For the Coastal Express Policy Committee, the members are Directors Wolf, Williams, Dominguez, and Clark. For the CalVans Committee, Director Richardson is primary, Hartman is alternate. And for the Executive Committee is Chair Hartman, Patino, Bennett, Wolf, and Richardson.
Thank you. And before I ask for a motion, is there any public comment?
We have no public comment.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve this slate of nominees? So moved. And a second? And would you call the roll?
Directors Williams,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Adam, Richardson, Lizaldi, Mosby, Aceves,
Aye.
Dominguez, Patino, Andrezek, and Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Good, and thank you for getting us through that convoluted, most difficult issue of the year, right? All right. Moving to number 7, our state legislative program. Would you read that into the record?
Certainly. Item 7, State Legislative Program. 7A, receive report from SBCAG state lobbyist Gus Corey of Corey Consulting and approve state legislative platform for 2018. 7B, appoint an SBCAG board delegate to attend Central Coast Coalition Sacramento Lobby Day event.
Mr. Hart.
Chair Hartman and directors, as you can see from the state legislative report, there are significant changes this year. Those reflect the passage of Senate Bill 1 in last legislative session. Tremendous achievement by the legislature, very important to SBCAG and all the member agencies. It's something that we have been working for a very long time to achieve, and it has resulted in rather significant changes to our legislative platform that you see here before you. The references to augmenting transportation funding sources have been changed now to reflect those new funding sources, and the focus of our legislative efforts this session will be on obtaining those legislative funding sources. Gus Corey, our state lobbyist, will talk more specifically about what we're doing to make that happen. The other change to the state legislative program is the deletion of the reference to environmental impacts and the references to CEQA reform, because that is something the legislature is not likely to take up this legislative session, so we decided to take that out of the legislative platform. We certainly could keep it if you felt it was appropriate to have it still there. It may come up again in the future, at which point, if it's a likely issue in an upcoming legislative session, we can add it back for that matter. TTAC asked for 2 other additions to the legislative platform. We brought it to them for their review. One was to have reference to providing additional resources to local agencies for SB 743 implementation, and the other was to have some specific geographic boundaries referenced in the legislative platform to the 101 HOV work. So we've made those 2 changes in the revised legislative platform. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about that. And if not, then I would just introduce Gus Corey, our state lobbyist, to talk to you specifically about what we'll be doing in Sacramento this year to help out SBCAG and the member agencies.
I think Mr. Corey can come up and we'll ask you questions at the end.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Gus Corey from Corey Consulting. Pleasure to be here as always. As Greg mentioned, the legislature had delivered on a transportation package last year, and so in years prior, we've been coming forward to you and lamenting the fact that Sacramento hasn't done its fair share, and it's been a disproportionate burden upon the county to really fund our infrastructure needs. And so a lot of the red line is getting rid of some old language and really just amplifying that there are opportunities this year through various competitive programs to aggressively pursue funding. And I think the recent natural disasters have really underscored the need to try to improve our infrastructure, since 101 is really the lifeline within the county. So very briefly, even though it looks like you know, there's a lot of strikeouts and additions in here, to be very succinct, voters will have an opportunity this June to vote on ACA 5, which will protect transportation revenues from diversion. And the aforementioned, what I had mentioned about the competitive programs, there are about 4 different competitive programs that we're trying to acquire funding from. And so we're just citing those funding programs in the legislative platform for your review, trying to be mindful of multimodal opportunities too. It's not just about the freeway, it's about public transportation as well. And so there's various pots of funding. We've been going to Sacramento with your staff and working with our legislative delegation. We're talking about delaying in a train. And so that's also trying to deliver on the promise of having the low sand retiming service up by April, and in making substantial investments on the 101. And so just to give you an idea of what we've been doing over the course of the last several months, we've had a fantastic partnership with Caltrans, first and foremost. They are co-sponsoring our submission before the California Transportation Commission, requesting about $180 million of funding to fix the 101 to continue the HOV lane project. Your staff has been incredible in being responsive and available to meet with transportation commissioners and their staff. Folks really understand the need for funding in our area. The commission is, their deadline for the application is February 16th. We've been working feverishly. Caltrans is going to submit the application on our behalf. And then allocations, fingers crossed, we're hoping will occur at the commission's May 16th meeting. So we hope to come back to you and report some good news. That's pretty substantial. The last big award that I could recall was a couple years ago. We received $60 million from Phase 3, and that's when we were talking about doing some cuts statewide. The state was looking at $754 million worth of cuts. But we've been able to punch over our weight because the Brown administration has recognized that this, again, is a vital corridor. Governor Brown had referenced the 101 in his letter to the Trump administration, to the National Governors Association as well. So we've definitely been able to raise our profile, and we're hoping for a substantial award again come May. That's honestly the long and short of what's in the platform and our activities. It's pretty exciting stuff. There's a lot that goes into this. It's obviously very technical work that's being undertaken. But this is the continuation of conversations that have been happening over the course of several years. And I just very much appreciate your confidence in your staff and in me to be your mouthpiece in Sacramento to help articulate our story to the key decision makers up there. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the platform, on what to expect in 2018, or any other questions that you might have.
Directors on the South Coast, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Curry?
I have a question, Gus. What would, beyond the CTC application, what would be the other things that we would be going up there to lobby on whoever SBCAG appoints to represent the body?
Well, the CTC's...
What do you see as the emerging issues? What's the SB1 of next year, and what's the some of the things that you're seeing here and we'll be dealing with?
So, Director Williams, it's aside from the Transportation Commission, the California State Transportation Agency has some purview over other competitive programs for intercity rail service. That's clearly a need for us, especially with the retiming effort. We want to be able to make sure that in the near future we have newer rolling stock to compel folks to have a great experience. That's something that Senator Jackson has been looking towards, and Assemblymember Limon also has taken an interest in. There is, clearly it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room is what happens with SB1, and so I think we have to operate under the assumption that it's state law. It's an opportunity. Our constituents are paying the taxes, and so we want to try to get more than our fair share back to the county and try to improve our infrastructure until otherwise notified. And so that obviously is permeating the conversation in Sacramento. There's been a change. Secretary Brian Kelly is changing his role to become director of the High-Speed Rail Authority. So it'll be interesting to see how the acting secretary, what his priorities are going to be. Acting Secretary Brian Annis, who's deputy secretary. And so, we hope to just continue the good work. I think this year is all about just implementation of SB1. Folks feel like the legislature feels like it did its job by passing the package, and so we don't really anticipate any other legislation of significance this year, but it's early. We're only in January. The bill introduction deadline is not until February 17th, and so we'll be able to report back to you on other items of interest.
Thank you. Directors Wolf or Seves, did you have any questions? Supervisor Wolf?
No, Madam Chair. No, I don't. Thank you.
None from me. Hello, Gus.
Okay, and I don't see any lights up here. All right, I think that does it. Do we have any public comment slips?
We have no public comment.
Okay, and so we need a motion to accept the report and approve the legislative program, and then we need a delegate to go secondly. Oh, yes.
So,
Mr.
Matt,
Kern.
I'm sorry, I was going to let you conclude with item A, and then I was going to just give a brief overview of item B. Unless you want to take them both together, I'll just say a quick blurb if you like.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I've had the privilege over the course of going on 9 years of organizing the Central Coast Coalition's Lobby Day activities, and so that's basically the 5 Central Coast counties going from Santa Cruz down to Santa Barbara. It's been a successful endeavor. We've really been able to raise the priorities of the Central Coast through our collaboration with other counties. That's manifested in, under SB1, for example, there's a pot of money, it's called the Trade Corridor Program. The whole Central Coast gets $16 million as a target, and the other counties have basically acquiesced and said, you know what, we see the value in you completing your 101 project, so we're willing to defer our request to make sure that you get fully funded. And so that collaboration would not have been possible had we not embarked on this journey with them years and years ago. So there's a trust, and so what I've been able to do is put together meetings with the 7 delegation members along the Central Coast, meetings with the Transportation Agency, Director of Caltrans, and the Transportation Commission to talk to us about, issues of the day that they see. And so we're having the meeting or the lobby day earlier this year, and we usually have it in March. We're having it on January 30th, and the reason being is I want to make sure that folks get in and they're able to make their case before the applications on SB1 are due, so that we can have our legislative delegation help get us over the finish line. So,
And January 30th is a Tuesday, right?
That's
and it's
correct.
a Board of Supervisors meeting. And so I think sometimes the chair of SBCAG has gone, but in this case, she can't. And so we need someone else who's willing to step up. And it might be the vice chair.
If no one else wants to, I'm happy to accompany Gus. I guess it would be more of a question for Rachel whether I can do that.
Well, and the issue is there is a Board of Supervisors meeting January 30th.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's why I can't go.
No, you're not getting
Yeah. I probably should have remembered that.
No, you cannot get out of another one.
Okay, so Director Patino can go. So I think then we're ready for a motion. I'm just wondering if we can capture all A and B in a single motion to accept the report, approve the legislative platform, and our delegate for the lobby day. So may I have a motion for those 3 things? And a second?
So moved.
And so would you call the vote?
Director Williams?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Adam? Richardson? Lizaldi? Mosby? Aceves?
Aye.
Dominguez? Patino? Andrezek? And Chair Hartman.
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you, Mr. Curry, very much for the great report and the great work.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Item number 8. Would you read that into the record, Ms. Contreras?
Certainly. Item 8, Federal Legislative Agenda. 8A, receive a report from SBCAG's federal lobbyist, Don Gilchrist, on federal transportation issues and approve SBCAG's federal legislative agenda for 2018. 8B, authorize the SBCAG chair, vice chair, and immediate past chair to travel with staff to Washington, D.C.
Mr. Hart.
Chair Hartman, the federal legislative program is much less revised than the state legislative program. We have 2 changes. One is referencing the administration's proposed infrastructure initiative and trying to make sure that anything that might come out of that initiative would benefit SBCAG. There's been some discussion about giving credit to local agencies that have done things to augment local funding sources for transportation. And so the concern we have is that if new legislation is passed, that we would be able to get credit for the passage of Measure A and even potentially at the state level the passage of SB 1. We don't want the federal legislation to take a moment in time and reward folks who take action in the future and not recognize the contribution of local funding sources from agencies like SBCAG in the state of California. So that's the primary change in our federal legislative program that we worked with Mr. Gilchrist. In addition to that, TTAC asked for the inclusion of reference to the National Association of Counties resolution requesting Congress allocate new funding that might come out of an infrastructure plan directly to local agencies for local streets and roads. The county's public works director and the county's federal lobbyist, Mr. Gilchrist, worked on this with the National League of Cities. They were successful in getting this plank in the National Association of Counties legislative program. So we think it makes sense to echo that support from SBCAG for that inclusion, and this will be part of the discussions at the federal level with infrastructure package. So those are the only two changes that we have from TTAC and from staff. And if you don't have any questions about that, I'll again introduce Don Gilchrist, our federal lobbyist, to give you more details about what's going on in Washington.
Madam Chair.
Director Richardson.
I'd like to stress the self-help portion of the trip to Washington, but also the result of the closure of Highway 101, the significance of the highway to our economic survival, number one. And number two is to get that highway added to the freight highway system. I think that that's an effort that should be utmost in priority because particularly of what we've happened since Los Conchitos and then this Montecito effort. I think that the feds ought to be aware of the importance of Highway 101.
Certainly, given what's just happened and is still happening, the visibility of the 101 freeway is very prominent at the state and national level. So the timing of us going back to Washington and making that case for funding directly for the 101, it could not be better timed in that sense.
Mr. Hart, if I could follow up then, is it already designated as part of the freight highway system, Highway 101?
No, it is not, but there has been recent changes. In fact, I think Mr. Gilchrist can speak to that directly, but that is something that we have been lobbying for many years, and I think we have good news to share with you, too. So that is something that's evolving as we speak. We just had exchanged letters and emails with Mr. Gilchrist about this last week, and I think he has something to add.
Okay, so this suggestion doesn't require a change in our legislative platform.
No, we have that in the existing legislative platform, and that is something we will emphasize when we're in Washington.
Mr. Gilchrist, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Don Gilchrist with Thomas Walters and Associates. Good to be here again. We provided a written report in December, and I thought I would just briefly update that with a presentation. I appreciate the questions, and we'll want to address those in detail. I'm going to try to be brief in the interest of time, but I certainly would love to talk about these things in as much detail as you'd like. 2017, first of all, a little bit of a rough year in Washington, D.C. A lot of chaos and disruption. I want to amend my first point, funding impasse, but no shutdown, yet. There's a vote scheduled later today in the House. If that passes, it will go to the Senate for a fourth continuing resolution to provide short-term funding through mid-February, which would keep the government operational. At this point, we don't know if it will pass. And if it doesn't, then funding authority would expire at midnight tomorrow and the government would shut down. So we're keeping a close eye on that. We're going to talk about the infrastructure initiative, but I'll just say in 2017 it didn't go anywhere, and that was a big disappointment. We did have a tax bill, and that's been widely reported on. But just from the transportation perspective, I think stakeholders were disappointed that it wasn't an opportunity that was taken advantage of to shore up the Highway Trust Fund. There was hope that revenue could come from the tax package that could be put in the trust fund to help resolve the solvency issues that we have, and that was a disappointment for transportation. However, the FAST Act is in law, and it was year 2, and that's the bright spot. In the midst of all this chaos and bad news, the FAST Act programs were fully implemented, for the most part fully funded. which is great news, and that provided stability for the transportation programs that are important to SBCAG. But you'll recall, let me see here, you'll recall that the FAST Act, the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, was signed into law in 2015. It's a 5-year authorization of federal highway, transit, rail, and highway safety programs. And one of the most important things is that it provided some predictability in the highway and transit formula programs. And over the life of the bill, we're seeing modest increases in those programs instead of the flat funding that we had been seeing for many years. Some of the other elements in the FAST Act is the freight formula program that Director Richardson was referring to, and the new nationally significant projects program, also called infragrants. And now those are both potential sources of funding for the 101 project. On the transit side, there's a new grant program for buses, and that was very helpful to the transit agencies in the county so far. And the passenger rail grant programs were restarted after they had lapsed in 2013. These are not large sums of money for passenger rail yet, but it's important that the federal government got recommitted to the idea. And even modest amounts of funding could be very helpful for your efforts to improve commuter rail on the Central Coast. Talking about the Highway Trust Fund, it was shored up in the FAST Act, but it was a short-term fix. And as we look forward to the next highway bill in 2020, the insolvency issues that result from motor fuels taxes being insufficient to pay for transportation programs is much worse in 2020 than we had to deal with in the FAST Act. So that's why we always are talking about the Highway Trust Fund and what we can do to kind of bring some stability to that. Before I move on the freight formula program, your staff is working through the state to obtain miles for critical highway designations that would make you eligible for that. We're also working with people that the chair has met with, and I believe in the past you've met with at the Federal Highways Administration, to get the section of the 101 on the Central Coast included in the multimodal freight network. And that's pending right now. We're talking with them. I don't have good news yet, but we're still having discussions on that, and hopefully we'll have some positive news in the future on that. But that's just the FAST Act. I do want to talk about the infrastructure plan. You know, what happened in 2017. You'll recall that that was, in fact, when I was here with you last year around this time, it was real big news, $1 trillion for infrastructure. It didn't go anywhere in 2017, primarily because they couldn't identify a funding mechanism. And without a way to pay for it, it made it hard for the White House or Congress to put forward a serious proposal. Apparently they have some ideas on that they're not sharing with the general public, but if they don't identify a funding mechanism, it's going to be a big problem this year as well. The second thing I would want to mention is that there was a limited amount of bandwidth in Congress, and they just didn't have the energy to deal with this. They had the health care debate, they had the budget debate, then the tax bill, and that just made it hard to get the infrastructure plan off the ground. And you will recall, this is a little bit of a more minor detail, but it's still very, very significant for SBCAG, that there's a difference of opinion about whether the main effort should be on public funding or whether it should be on private incentives. And we've been arguing that, along with many other transportation stakeholders, that there's a lot of projects like the 101 that don't necessarily fit the mold of a public-private partnership. And I think this year we've seen the fruits of the advocacy we've done on that in the past 12 months, and people are starting to come around to our way of thinking. And as we kind of move into 2018, I think we're going to be able to find some common ground on that issue. Now, what we can expect this year, I think in the next week or two, we may see somewhat of a more defined proposal coming out of the White House. No real details are available yet. We've been hearing rumors, and I just wanted to spread rumors as best I can here, but it looks like the package will be $200 billion of federal money, which is supposed to leverage up to $800 billion of non-federal money, and that's where the $1 trillion number will come in. We've been hearing that there will be some type of state and local incentive grants, which can be used for transportation, water projects, all sorts of infrastructure, and that is potentially good news for SBCAG. There's almost certainly going to be a set aside for rural projects. The Trump White House is big on the idea of transformative projects, and so we expect to see a new program for that, and those are larger, harder to fund projects. And there should be some new credit and financing programs that become available. So once the White House releases their package, it'll go to Congress, and Congress will have their chance to have their input and write the actual legislation. But in any case, I do believe this is going to be a major part of our advocacy for this year. I put together this list just to let you know there's a mix of other issues that we're keeping an eye on. And of course, we want to finish up 2018 funding, but also this year we have to get 2019 enacted. Because of the importance of the FAST Act in protecting your transportation programs, we want to continue to support full implementation and funding for those programs. And of course, we're continuing to seek project funding for the 101 through the Tiger Grant and through the Infra Grant programs. And we also want to be working with Congress to make sure that those programs continue to be funded into the future. So that'll be part of what we're doing this year. You don't necessarily hear about it, but regulatory streamlining is a major emphasis with the Trump administration. And I think there's a good chance that in 2018 we'll see something coming out of the Department of Transportation on that, probably in the areas of project acceleration or environmental streamlining, something like that. And just having the Highway Trust Fund always in mind, looking for any opportunities that we can to shore that up. So to address these issues, we have recommended a trip to Washington, D.C. for board members and staff. We think that late February is a good time to be there. It'll be a very strategic time to weigh in on these issues. As was said, we always emphasize that Santa Barbara is a self-help county. And we think that this is going to be an important point for this administration. But the other elements of our advocacy include things like the fact that the 101 project is the highest transportation priority in the region, and that it's part of a system of improvements designed to benefit the entire region. And we also talk about the importance to other parts of the state of having this as a reliable part of the system, and the importance of the 101 for continued operations at Vandenberg. So all this will be part of what we're doing. It is something that takes place as part of a broader coalition of people who are supporting 101 improvements in the Central Coast, and also the larger infrastructure plan will require us to work in cooperation with other transportation stakeholders. We're in constant contact with other local government organizations in D.C., and we'll continue to do that. We certainly want to work with any allies that we can in order to maximize the funding opportunities for SBCAG. So we look forward to working with you and on your behalf to implement the agenda that you approved today, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Do any directors have questions for Mr. Gilchrist? Director Wolf, Williams, or Aceves in South Coast?
I had my questions answered yesterday. Don was happy enough to come by the county building.
Yes, thank you. No questions.
None for me, thank you.
Okay. Director Mosby.
You mentioned Vandenberg. What is your ideas of Vandenberg? What are your...
Well, it's just part of the advocacy we do to show how if the 101 is not there functioning efficiently and reliably, that could hurt access to Vandenberg. So it's just one of the arguments that we're trying to bring to the table when we're in Washington, D.C., explaining why this has some national significance.
At one time in 1978, actually, they recognized Highway 246, and the federal government was going to pay for a lot of what's being paid for now, and that is a passage over the river and a 4-lane that was directly connecting all the way across. And that was, I forget which project they had out at the base, but there is enhancements and expansions potentials at the base, one with a potential drone base and a couple other things happening. So, granted, if the 101 goes out, there's a problem, but if 246 goes out, because we're compromised with Highway 1, I mean, that can go with slides or whatever. It's a difficult highway, but maybe there's something else, some other movement that could come back with that.
Okay.
Granted, 101's important, but if you can only get to Buellton.
We do want to keep an eye out for any other opportunities, that's for sure.
And I'm not sure, I don't have all the documents from 78, but there was a movement to do all of that back then at one time, and we wouldn't be spending some
appreciate that.
Local money currently.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Patino?
Yes, I know that when the city of Santa Maria has gone back to D.C., we have really advocated for for designating the freight highway system because we are an ag area and there's a lot of trucking here in Santa Maria. So I don't know how we coordinate that maybe with SBCAG, but we'll be going back probably maybe early March. So it might be the week after SBCAG is there.
Okay. Well, we'll want to integrate that for sure, and maybe we'll be able to bring some information back that could help the city as well when we're in D.C. if we're in there in February.
Thank you.
Seeing no more lights, do we have any public comment slips?
We have no public comment.
All right. I think then we are ready for a motion. And again, I think we could combine this to receive the report, to authorize, to approve the legislative platform and authorize the chair and vice chair and immediate past chair to go to D.C. May I have a motion? A second?
So moved.
Okay. And would you call the vote, please, Ms. Contreras?
Directors Williams?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Adam? Aye. Richardson? Aye. Lizaldi? Aye. Mosby? Aye. Aceves?
Aye.
Dominguez? Aye. Patino? Aye. Andresic? Aye. And Chair Hartman?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. So that brings us to the informational items, and just a procedural question for our council. May I ask for public comment for all of those and see if we have any? Do it in one fell swoop.
Madam Chair, yes, that's fine.
All right. And do we have any public comment on the informational items?
We have no public comment.
All right. So moving to our 1-minute reports.
Item 9, 1-minute reports. Board members and alternates are invited to provide updates on the activities in their districts or cities.
And do we have any on the South Coast? Supervisor Williams?
Sure. Yes, I just want to, first of all, thank everyone for their well wishes during this terrible and terrifying week. But also want to say, obviously, the help on moving essential personnel has been really important. So we appreciate that help. And of course, hoping that we get buses for the general public going by Monday, which is the goal. And persevere. Obviously, the train is still an option, though usually in general the first train of the day is extremely crowded. So if there are any commuters watching, in my experience, and I've taken the train a host of times already, the best thing to do is to take a midday train the day before, stay overnight somewhere, and then work for a couple days, and then go back when you run out of clothes. That's been my experience, the best way, and so I know it's difficult on everyone, but hope that commuters find a way, and if they need some help, feel free to call our office.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Supervisor. Director Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know we'll be hearing from Caltrans, but just on my quick report is to acknowledge and thank Caltrans workers and their management team for everything that they've been doing and attending our community meetings and EOC meetings. They're quite an incredible group. I just wanted to state that I submitted a list of questions to Eileen. I don't know if Eileen's there today, about some of the issues in the 2nd District, specifically the 154 storage area. And I want to thank Eileen. I've had really prompt responses, and I would note that the 154 exit to Cathedral Oaks is now open, and they are definitely monitoring the storage area next to 154 by Cathedral Oaks, and I look forward to the final answers from Ms. Lowe. But again, I really do appreciate their quick response and everything that they're doing for this community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Mr. Gubbins is here today, so he'll respond, I think, to what you've put forward. Director Aceves?
No report, thank you.
Okay. Anyone here? Director Richardson?
Yes, you know, I've talked to several people about the riding of the train between Santa Barbara and Carpinteria. I think that people have told me it reminds them of a train in India. There are just so many people aboard it, you know, that are packed, and it's to the point where the conductor can't even check for tickets. And I'd like for us to take advantage of the ridership in this short period to stress the importance of the rail and to encourage folks after 101 is open to take the train. They will have experienced it, and I think we should make an advertising push for the people of Santa Maria, for the people of Ventura, to take the train. They've experienced it, and it'll be a good opportunity to continue with that process.
Director Mosby?
Yeah, I'm going to thank Caltrans for a prompt response. Some people say you guys are a little slow, and I tell you, with less than 24 hours with assistance with an encroachment permit in Lompoc, it was just a couple hours later they actually did a site visit. Things are moving along with that, so I just, double thumbs up on that, on a prompt response and getting a project moving forward. Thank you.
Director Patino?
The city of Santa Maria knew this storm was coming in, as we usually do. We make preparations, we clean the storm drains. Our staff is on notice of, when we know the storm is coming through and the streets are clean. And so we didn't have, and the reservoirs are ready to go, so we didn't have any major problems. But I guess it was Monday, we were getting notices from Santa Barbara and Montecito. And so we sent down, I think there were 6 or 8 firefighters to do what firefighters do in recovery and response. We sent down a sergeant and 5 of our police officers. We sent 2 different water teams down because the problem in Montecito they're having with the potable water. And we sent media people down also because you have to man the media centers. And I guess some man called and wanted to go up to his house to rescue his bird. And you don't think of all these things that people go through and the importance of what they want to do, not knowing if he can even get to his house. But I just want you to know that the city of Santa Maria did send people up there, and we were responsive to those needs. Thank you.
Yes, Director Andrusik.
Yes, thank you. At the request of Mayor Sierra, in Buellton we have a blind man that traverses through the city, and we have new sidewalks, so he's reaching out further and further. When he comes to the intersections, and I think the one Holly Mayor Sierra referenced was an industrial way, he has no way of knowing.
We can't hear up here down here in Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Would you repeat? Yeah, start again and get it a little closer yet.
Can you hear that, Supervisor Wolf?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, sorry for that. We have a man in Buellton who is ambulatory and blind, and he's traversing through the city, and citizens are concerned because when he comes to the intersection to press the button, he has no idea when the light is going to be on or off if he's by himself. Holly asked that we look into establishing dialogue and perhaps installation. I was thinking when we were last in Monterey at League of Cities, they have talking signs in specific areas. This seemed to be something they thought was appropriate at Industrial Way, because that's where all of many businesses that people are walking to and commuting through Buellton. So she asked that I put that in the 1 minute for you to perhaps make a future agenda item, or maybe Director Gubbins could meet with Holly and walk the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other 1 minute reports? Director Dominguez.
First, I wanted to start by saying how excited I am to work with all of you. And even once I saw how thick the agenda was and how substantive the work and the research required, I'm excited to be here. Second, I want to follow up with my colleagues who've thanked the government employees, both Caltrans, our colleague cities that have pitched in to help, the number of agencies who've been in the city of Santa Barbara and the county, and even down in Ventura. You can see hundreds of different government vehicles from different cities, villages, towns around the state, and even several from out of state. So it's been impressive how many agencies have responded and helped, and also the number of volunteers. But I think at this point we're close to 3,000 government workers down there helping out. So it's been very impressive. So I'm very excited. And then also I want to double down on the comments about the publicity for the train and getting people to take the train and seeing the value of that alternative transportation source. It's so important, and we need to keep pushing on that. Thank you all.
Director Lizaldi.
Yes. I want to comment on the, the system put in place for mutual aid. We also had a couple of strike teams sent to the area, but also, and we're appreciated in the past of all agency helping the city of Guadalupe. Our strike force at first was set up at the helicopter area. There wasn't much action for a while, but then understand that you get closer to the fire, and when the helicopters start to fly, and they were working. Also, we sent a unit for police enforcement. That was necessary. Our director, Hoving, which you have to realize the fatigue with all the first responders, emergency control. Monday, Tuesday, I don't know if he's back in the city, but he relieved somebody in the emergency control area. They were dealing with a lot of fatigue issues, which is something that you assume. But we send out all our best wishes to the South County. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to add, I think Mr. Gubbins is wearing an 805 strong, but it really has been an unprecedented event that we've experienced and ongoing since December 4th. And everyone has pitched in. We really are one county, one future, and we're going to recover from this. But it certainly does put at the forefront what an important mission SBCAG has, and how our transportation corridors are just really fundamental to health and well-being and economy and across the board. So thank you to everyone who's participated, and we are going to get through this, but it's been a long haul, and it's going to take a lot to recover, so we got to continue with it. So with that, our executive director's report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the board. My list of items doubled throughout this meeting, so please bear with me on the things I've added at the last minute. Just to start, I had several meetings yesterday in the San Ynez Valley to discuss circulation and bicycle infrastructure projects and issues out there. There will be an item on your next agenda regarding submitting a planning grant to the state of California, Caltrans, to complete a safety and circulation study for the San Ynez Valley. So please, I'll be reaching out to several of the board members to discuss that prior to that. It will also go to the North County Subregional for their discussions as well. On your agenda, there's an item that you approved, so thank you, regarding the State of Good Repair for Transit funding. This was $2.3 million that was available through SB1, and we went through a process this past couple of months with your transit operators to divvy up those funds in a fair and equitable manner, and I would like to say we were successful in doing that. Each of the transit agencies received a portion of the funding, and it was a very congenial and collaborative process, so I want to thank the staff and the transit agencies for pitching in and making the best, making a decision on a recommendation to the board on how to spend that critical $2.3 million to improve our infrastructure for transit. I also want to point out that Greg and I had the pleasure, really, of serving on a EOC committee to provide the critical transportation plan that we started this past Monday to provide transit to employees that live in Ventura County and in Carpinteria to get them up to Santa Barbara and vice versa if we had people that lived in Santa Barbara and needed to get down south. I think 4, 5, or 6 meetings over the weekend. It's pretty amazing the work that is done out of the EOC and the problem solving that happens on the spot. And I personally just felt proud to be part of that team. And I think we were successful in our mission of providing that transportation. This is one of the things I added. Traffic Solutions is, I don't know if they're there at this minute, but they probably are at the train station to meet the train that's coming up from Carpinteria to hand out information and give people alerts of we plan to have peak hour service starting in April, for the train to get commuters from Ventura to Santa Barbara, and we want them to get on that train and use that service. So yeah, we had the same idea. This is a great, these are our customers, and they're captive audience when they're getting on and off the train. So our traffic solution staff jumped on that opportunity and is providing that outreach, and also through the websites and the social media and whatnot. So thank you. Great minds think alike, so thank you. I also have to give out a big thank you to Jennifer from LoSan, the executive director from the LoSan service, for stepping up. She did an amazing job in getting the additional train cars. We have a capacity problem, which is a good problem to have until you're stuck on a train with, bodies pressing against you. So it has been a lifeline, and so the additional trains on each of our runs has been critical to provide that service. So I'm praying and hoping that those trains will remain here until we have the 101 open. The original schedule was for those trains to go back to their homes at the end of this week. So we shall see if those trains will remain, those cars will remain in our area to provide this critical service that we desperately need. And last but not least, Caltrans, you're amazing. Thank you for everything you're doing. Wow, all the pictures and everything. And I don't want to take away his thunder, but I'll just leave it at that big, big thank you to Caltrans. Thank you.
Mr. Gubbins.
Okay, with a setup like that.
I wanted to get out of your way.
I only have 2 items today. And before I get to the more substantial one, going on with something the exec director just said, there is currently a call for projects from Caltrans for sustainable transportation planning grants. This year, it's a little bigger amount of money than last year. It's almost $41 million, and it's in sustainable communities, strategic partnerships, adaptation planning. And the deadline for those applications is end of the day Friday, February 23rd. So bringing something to your next board meeting would be in time for that. District 5, Caltrans, is hosting a grant workshop on January 31st from 10:30 to 12 up in our San Luis office. I believe all the TACs have gotten that information, so your staff should have it. I do have a flyer I can leave with your clerk if you guys want to make sure that you have it as well, and you can check with your staffs. But I'm excited. Last year in the 17-18, we did district-wide. We were able to get 9 transportation grants here in Santa Barbara County. There was one to the city of Carpinteria, to the Santa Ynez Band of Chumash Indians, as well as to SBCAG directly for these type of grants. So look forward to being successful again this year. My second item is about the Montecito events. As has been mentioned, there has been some tremendous efforts down there. I know I've seen some of the directors down there. I've personally visited the site each of the last 3 days for various reasons, looking at things. And unfortunately, Santa Barbara 101 is not open yet, but I wanted to assure everyone that has been a top priority for Caltrans. And it is not just here in District 5. It has been a statewide effort. When I was at the community meeting, I was able to say we had brought crews up from our district based in LA, from our district based in San Bernardino. We have quite a few people out there. When you look at all of the Caltrans personnel on site, and we were able to grab Granite, who has an office local, Security Paving, who's working on the Linden Casitas, they are all working just on 101. We have other crews up on 192. When we look at just 101, we had over 300 personnel between us and the contractors working on it. When you look at the number of equipment, at one time I was overwhelmed. We had 100 dump trucks. On Tuesday, it came up close to 200. On Tuesday, we had 225 pieces of equipment out there between the dump trucks, the excavators, the loaders. And for those of you who know that Section 101, that's a fairly confined space. If you've seen the news reports, you saw that it just, with all the culverts clogged and everything else, turned into what looked like a giant bathtub or swimming pool. I do have a photo from about 10 minutes ago of what it looks like. And as you can see, all that water, all that muck is gone. Well, the majority of it. This is looking north from the 101 Olive Mill structure. So the majority of all that debris is gone. We can actually see pavement in some places. But before we can open this up safely to the traffic, we are still doing cleanup. You can see the guardrail down. We've had some damage, but most of what we lowered that for was to try and get into the median and clear out all that muck. We have some of our drainage inlets in that median. We do not want, the weather has been cooperating, and there was a big storm Monday that looks like it's pushed off a little bit, which is great news. First time in 6 years I've said something like that. It's great news. But when we have the drainage inlets in there, we have some very, very powerful vac trucks that can pull from one end, from jet from the others. We'll be working on things like that. We have to repair all our rail. Once we get the final, when we start sweep, we can't go and wash the roadways now because there's nowhere for the road to go. So we're going to be trying to sweep up everything you see there so that it's a safe surface. We are just now going to be able to investigate and start our pavement condition. What does the asphalt look like? Did any of the concrete panels fail under that kind of pressure and with the water and everything else? We've had a lot of construction equipment on it, so hopefully that would have exposed anything if it washed out underneath. But we are working round the clock, 12-hour shifts to make this happen just as soon as we can. I would love to give you a date on that. I can't. We've been as you can see here, we've been making great progress. But we've also been coordinating with the Santa Barbara Emergency Operations Center as well as with the Incident Command. They need to be doing this. Some of the roads, like Jameson Road, the frontage road there, has some sewer issues. We have to put some of that construction equipment onto this when we can get them through. So the fact that we can now get through on 101, before we let public on, we need to make sure it's safe. We need to, after we get all that mud off, we're going to have to stripe it even. We're going to have to put striping signs, rail. We are going to work as hard and as fast as we can. We know what the lifeline is here. One thing that wasn't known, I didn't publicize it because I didn't know till late Tuesday, the director of Caltrans came down yesterday. I was touring with him just so he could get a handle on this. Sacramento has, at the department level and an agency and other agencies, have been very supportive of the efforts. We know what the economic benefits, what the economic impact is on 101. And so we were down. I was able to visit the sites here. We actually toured 192 as well to see some of the damage we have up there. Speaking of that, we will continue working with the Emergency Operations Center Incident Command. We will open 101 just as soon as it's safe to do so. So just as soon as we do that, we'll be working with them on the repopulation efforts. Most of our efforts, not most of our efforts, our priority has been 101. 192, for those of you familiar with it, is greatly impacted. We know there we have at least 3 bridge structures that have been damaged. So right now we have only done preliminary inspections, but we know there's damage and probably repair and or replacement work on at least 3. So before we open that up to public, we have been limiting it to emergency access only, emergency vehicles. We need to be checking that. We will be bringing crews down at San Ysidro and some others. Now that we're able to clear debris, we can see the bottom of the structure. As of Tuesday, we couldn't do that. And so we are working as fast and as hard as we can. We will safely reopen. We will restore this. We will do it as quick as we can. I can't tell you exactly when that is yet. And we will be working closely with the sheriff and everyone else at the incident command and the EOC that it's done in an orderly manner so that it also facilitates what this county, what this community needs to do to move back in. As far as the detours, we have been telling people taking I-5 up to Highway 46 is a better detour than 166 if you're heading to points north. If you're heading to San Luis Obispo and doubling back, that has been our strong recommendation. We know 166 has been taking heavier traffic, especially in the weather with the fog that we're having and everything else. We are recommending 46 has had a lot of improvements over the last decade that 166 has not been able to have. Also, working with Losan, we acquired more rail cars, and there was a rumor going around that these were just extra cars that were sitting around. Losan has made it very clear that this is impacting other routes. They have made a conscious decision to have this route have the augmentation that they've been able to do. I've talked to Jennifer at Losan as well. I'm hoping, she had to check with her board, she couldn't guarantee. I'm hoping we will keep those cars just as long as 101 is closed and needs it. They're even adding cars. They sent 2 cars down yesterday. They're even adding cars so that we can get as much capacity as we can. There's approximately 100,000 vehicles a day that go through this section of 101, so that's well over 100,000 people that are directly impacted, as well as all the indirect impacts. We know that. We're working with the community. We're working with all the other agencies. We'll do things just as fast as we can. And I hope that the next time we talk, we'll talk about how quick we did it and the fact that it's open and everything else. So with that, I know Director Wolf has brought up some of our stockpile areas. Yes, I'm glad that you saw that we were trying to do the maintenance that we can. We have temporary stockpile areas that we're just trying to get stuff off the roadways. We have them at Cathedral Oaks, at Fairview in southbound direction, Fairview to Patterson, at the Patterson northbound off-ramp, at Highway 217 in Hollister. We're able to use a permanent site up closer to Buellton. Granite Construction has some area there off Santa Rosa Road, so they've been hauling to their own site, and so that won't have to be moved again. But the sites we're using at 154 are temporary, so we're trying to use our best management practices with berms and containments and monitor it to make sure that doesn't spill off that site or any of the other ones, including the dewatering that we may have to do up there. We will be doing that. The rain event has moved out. We think that we have at least another 7 days or so. We were going to get an update from National Weather Service this morning about when the next rains might come. We're hoping that with the weather cooperating and we have that window, we'll move further along. So with that, yes, my crews have been very busy. We have been busy. We've been communicating with people. They are getting tired. We have been able to spell them and bring people from out of the area so that people get a little bit of a break. But we will continue to do whatever we can to just restore the highways as soon as we can in cooperation with all the other agencies.
Thank you. Any questions?
I do have a question. How many cars then are coming up and how many?
Go ahead. I can go afterwards. No problem.
Thank you.
How many cars, how many trips are the trains making up, and how many cars are on that train?
They had earlier, I believe they had added, initially they had added 10 cars, which would add about 2,000 person a day capacity to the capacity that was already there. So I believe that brings us up to 4,000 or 5,000. If that.
The trips didn't increase. They just added cars to the existing schedule. So what I heard was it doubled the capacity of the existing train, so we could accommodate the increased demand.
I don't even know how many people in a car. So.
What do we determine?
Yeah. Not that it matters, but I was just curious.
100 per car.
And I have heard people refer to this as the Japanese model with pushers on the platform making sure that people get in.
200 per car.
200 per car. Director Williams?
And, I just wanted to, number one, thank you for your efforts. It's been an amazing amount of equipment that you've staged. Just again, back to the rail, my understanding is that even some of those additional cars were added in the last couple of days. Is that true? And so that capacity, even in the last couple of days, has been improved?
Yes, I believe it was 10 cars initially that were added, and I know 2 cars were traveling Wednesday morning, which I think is just yesterday. Sorry about that. So I believe they were starting either last night or this morning. They were starting to add yet another 2 cars to it. Yes.
Anyone else have questions or comments from Santa Barbara?
I do have a question for Mr. Govens. One thing that would help us is communication, and when you identify other sites, routes the trucks are taking. Our city's been impacted. I didn't find out about Glida Beach until it was well into the project. I didn't even know about Fairview until it was well into the project. And then the other night we had a truck drop its load on the freeway just south of Patterson. So, you know, we get all the calls, but it would help if we had more communication immediately so that we can give the right answers to our constituents.
Certainly, I will see what we can do to increase that. Again, there are multi-agencies. Places such as Goleta Beach are not Caltrans, but you know, I know there's a lot of trucks out there. As I said, on Tuesday, I believe there were 200 trucks alone. One of the questions that has come from, I know, some of the constituents to Supervisor Wolf and others was, you know, don't we secure loads? We do. We have requirements for secure and covering and everything else. But with the fluidity of this, rather than just a solid load, it did cause a failure on a gate release. So there was a truck that dumped onto the freeway. But we will do our best to maintain those, to get communication out when the events happen and when we are changing routes or sites. So yes, we'll take that back. Thank you, sir.
Director Mosby?
This morning on TV, I was watching where the county health was saying that there's potentially a health issue with the mud and such, with raw sewage and such in there. Is there concern with these stockpiles of any type of contaminated material or something?
That's part of the reason that we have these in temporary places that we can do. Right now we've been trying to take appropriate worker safety protection on there, as well as contain it with you know, the way we contain stormwater and everything else. We will be doing testing and figure out the proper disposal of it. You know, like I say, I know there's been some conflicting and confusing reports on the news. You know, with the beach closures, a lot of that is just from the contaminants that wash down with the rain, not from what the county or others might have been putting on the beach. But we will be testing material at different sites, and we'll be figuring out permanent places for those.
You'd mentioned that Granite had a permanent spot, though. So is
we have
all that material's been tested?
At their site, it will be permanently. It will stay up there, not have to be hauled off. But they have segregated it so that they know what it is, and we can do that later.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Director Wolf.
Thank you. And before I make my comments, I just want to just say a few things, complimentary things that weren't mentioned, and that is the transportation. Well, you did mention it, Margie, but I wanted to also talk about MTD and the cooperative spirit that you managed with MTD. I think it was nothing but spectacular to see that we were able to get you know, some of our essential employees, health workers and school teachers and whatnot, back and forth through the corridor. So I just want to thank whoever was involved in the EOC, Margie, with you folks, and certainly MTD, but I thought that was brilliant to do that. And regarding the Goleta Beach, certainly that was something that my office was aware of, and we've been in constant contact with our public works because, as Mr. Gibbons noted, Caltrans is not taking their material to Goleta Beach or Carpinteria Beach. But we have been in touch with public works and public health. In fact, yesterday we had a joint meeting with representatives of the city of Goleta so that all answers and questions could be answered. And of course, the issue of communication was forefront, and I think that we all understand the necessity of the nature of this emergency, but you know, a lot of it has to do with just giving out consistent messages, and that's what we're looking forward to in the future. But just in conclusion, I want to thank all of you who are sitting there who've made an incredible effort in this just terrible disaster. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Director Lizaldi?
Yeah, I want to thank Caltrans also in their efforts. We're also, believe it or not, impacted a little bit more. We noticed the rail, all of a sudden, at the station in Guadalupe are getting more people trying to get on the train. I mean, I'm assuming they're just trying to get past Santa Barbara. 166 is coming in there as the city of Santa Maria and us. You know, we're just that traffic filtering back. And I want to compliment Caltrans. I attended that 166 task force, the Highway Patrol, along with Director Patino here, and I had made a suggestion on the corridor of passing lanes with Joe Irwin, representative, and last week we had a conversation, so I want to compliment his timing on your guys' busy schedule of still having time to contact me and give me the information on it, that that wasn't a possibility in the passing lanes 10-year plan. But I wish for a different thought or a suggestion there. But right. Again, compliments to Caltrans. Thank you guys.
Okay, I guess that concludes for Caltrans today, and turning then to committee meetings and item number 12.
Madam Chairperson, members of the board, on December 6th, which seems like a lifetime ago, the Pacific Surfliner had their board meeting, and it was in the middle of all the fires, so we actually had to attend the meeting in Paso Robles. We went north and attended by phone. Helene Schneider was your representative on that board meeting, and obviously she's no longer a member of the board. So during that meeting, the Joint Powers Authority for the LoSAN approved an application to be submitted for the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program, a total of $704 million worth of projects. And included in that package of projects was 3 projects that are located in Santa Barbara County. The first one was to reconstruct the Ortega siding. And I think there was a support letter from District 1, from the Board of Supervisors. The second project was double tracking near the Carpinteria station, which would also allow access, pedestrian access below the train tracks, which was a advantage for the city of Carpinteria. And so they supported that with a support letter as well. And the third project was expansion of the Goleta train storage facility to store 2 additional trains rather than the just one that they can currently accommodate. And this would allow more flexibility with the timing of the trains and whatnot. So those are 2 great additions to the rail service if that application is awarded. And we were very supportive of that at the agenda, or on the agenda. The board also authorized the release of an RFP for consultant services to comprehensively evaluate the service north of LA to optimize the use of corridor infrastructure, which could lead to significant changes in the schedule and hopefully even add more peak hour service from Ventura to Santa Barbara, and that's our hope. So that's in addition to the peak hour schedule change we're making this April, we could actually add more service during those hours. And so whoever is our LoSAN representative, Michael Bennett, and will be advocating for that in the future. And they also presented the quarterly performance report for the ridership and fare box return in April and June of 2007. The Surfliner had an 81% fare box ratio, which is pretty amazing in any transit, public transportation providing service, and it's outstanding for an intercity rail service such as ours. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Richardson?
Madam Chair, the CalVans meeting was too late to be included in this agenda packet, but I've asked this newsletter to be distributed. You all have a copy of it. I'd like you to read it because it very well explains the purpose and the endeavors that CalVans is going through and what a great benefit it is to the county. So I'll report next month on this last month's CalVans. Next month CalVan will be dark, so we won't have a report for that one for February.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And is it Director Mosby? I'm never sure which. All right. Anything in Santa Barbara? No one's looking up, so I think that brings us to communications, item number 13.
Just so noted, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
All right, so what are we doing in closed session today?
Madam Chair, members of the board, there are 2 items scheduled for closed session. The first is Executive Director Performance Review under Government Code Section 54957 and conference with labor negotiators under Government Code Section 54957.6.
And an estimate for how long we might be?
We estimated about 30 minutes.
All right, thank you. So we'll reconvene in about 30 minutes. And our council will report out from closed session.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The board met in closed session on 2 items, the Executive Director Performance Review and Conference with Labor Negotiators, and took no reportable action.
Thank you. So with that, I adjourn the meeting until February 15th when we meet in Santa Barbara. Thank you.